So about a month ago, I actually had a pretty catastrophic failure here in the garage, and you can see it right behind me in the corner. It was actually terrifying. And although I'm not going to be able to tell you exactly what happened when this thing failed, what I can tell you is I need to replace it. There's a few things that are pointing to why this happened, and I'll discuss those with you here today, but I don't want this to happen to you is basically the point. This plug failed, and this plug is very common. This actual outlet itself is made by Leviton, and if you have a 1450 in your garage, there's a really good chance that this particular outlet is probably in your garage as well. This is an outlet that you can pick up at Lowe's, at Home Depot, your local hardware store, and it's not made for a ton of cycles. So when you're plugging in and unplugging, it's actually starting to loosen up. And it's because you're supposed to plug an appliance in there and leave it in there for 5-10 years and never unplug it. So that's why this thing is not made for this application. There's plenty of other videos out there of showing how these things fail, why they fail. So I'm not going to go into all those details. Just know this: if you have a 1450 in your garage, you're using a 1450 to charge your electric vehicle, whether it be a Tesla or any other electric vehicle, go out there, take the cap off, this white plate, take that plate off, and look at the brand on that. There's a very good chance that you also have a Leviton plug in there because it's the most common out there. And this was installed by a professional. Now, when I installed this Autel charger right behind me, I did take that apart. I put it back in, but that was months and months ago. So I don't believe the issue was related to me reinstalling it incorrectly, or else I would have had this fault quite a while ago. So basically what appears to have happened is this thing loosened up over time, and the way I was plugging in our 1450, which is what our wall connector is hooked up to, it actually caught my finger too. I actually got a pretty bad burn on my finger. This thing hit so fast, and the entire house lost power when it happened. It was terrifying. It was really scary, and I didn't know exactly what had happened at the moment. I don't know if I could have actually died or not. It certainly was as terrifying as if I could have definitely died, but the entire house lost power. So fortunately, the panel did what it's supposed to do, and it caught something and it stopped it as quickly as possible. That said, you can see there's some burns here, and these things are not made to burn, but for one reason or another, there was a small flame there, and I was too stunned to really do anything about it. This is outside drywall. This stuff does not catch fire very easily, so fortunately, it just melted some of the plastic. It looks a lot worse than it actually is right behind me. Now, this sounds kind of weird because 1450 is kind of a standard out there for electric vehicles. A lot of home builders are actually installing 1450s in the garage for an electric vehicle. In some areas, it's code. They have to have an outlet out there. So why would this thing fail, and why would this be available? Well, here's the thing. There are actual plugs that are designed for a lot more cycles. So those are what you should be using. And as long as you have a 1450 out there, just again, please take a moment, take a look at the brand of what you have in there. And if you need to, replace that thing pretty quick. I'm going to show you what the two options are that are most cited and most recommended, and I'm going to select one of the two, and I'll explain why as soon as I get that done. But I have everything here. I actually purchased both of the outlets. They are not cheap, but let's go through those now. What you're going to find interesting is both of these outlets I'm about to show you are made by the same company. One of them is actually branded as a Hubble device, and the other is under a different brand called Bryant, and these are actually both made by Hubble. So up first, we have our Bryant unit right here, and the biggest difference you're going to find on this versus what's on the wall is the material of this, call it plastic or nylon. This stuff is made for high temperatures, and it's made to hold its form for much longer. So it's going to take a lot longer for these to wear and for the plug to kind of get loose because of the wear on there versus the traditional Leviton one that's on the wall behind me. So this 1450 right here is the Bryant one. And as we look on the back, we can see that same material. It is all the way back. So everything is all the same. And when we look on the back, we also have nice adjustments here. This is actually a better setup because we're able to put our cable in here, and you're going to torque it from out here. You're going to get a much more secure setup with this. They've also got some pretty decent labels on here too, because I didn't see any directions in the package, but I don't know if you'll be able to see that or not, but it says white down here, and then it says green up here. So white is your neutral, green is your ground, and then your red and black wires would be the hot wires left and right. And those are labeled as XXX and YYY. The faceplate itself is actually a hardened steel, and it's actually a higher quality hardened steel, because with the Leviton one, I can bend it pretty easily. Even just with my hands, this is not going to bend easily. So you know how sometimes when you screw in an outlet and it bends the corners because it's not perfectly straight, this appears that it's going to hold its shape quite a bit better and probably hold in the box a lot more secure. Here is the Hubble version. The first thing you'll notice is this thing is shiny. This is actually not an exposed part of this. The only thing you see when you're done is the outside here. So I'm not sure what the whole point of having a polished finish like that, or a plated finish that looks that nice. But other than that, it appears when you look on the side to be the same material as the Bryant, and I will hold them up next to each other, of course, here in a moment. But very, very similar material, and the construction appears to be basically the same. So here's the Bryant one, here's the Hubble one. You can see the face of these. This one has a little bit more of a, I guess, a finish on the face, versus this one doesn't look like it's have any special finish on the face of it. The metal itself, of course, one is plated, one does not have a polished plating. It looks like a zinc plating, actually, now that I'm looking at it. And then, but the thickness of that steel appears to be the same. And even on the back side of these, you can see they both have the same exact words there, the same exact strip length. Everything looks exactly the same. So this is, for all intents and purposes, this is the same thing, and it's about half the price. I will put those prices right up here. It's the same stamped faceplate. It just has a different plating on it. That is it. And then on the front, the molding here, it looks like has more of a textured finish on it. But other than that, these are exactly the same. So there's a different location for the UL stamping. So they've basically just moved a couple of the labels around and put a different finish on this back plate here. And that's about it. They're the same thing. Material appears to be exactly the same. You can even see the injection molding. There's parting lines here. They are in the exact same spot, which is really interesting. Let me show you what I mean. So if we put both of our face plates like this, both facing the same direction, and I put this sideways, you see that? So it's the same exact mold that's making these, basically, is what that means. So they've just got a different face on it, I guess. So they're the same thing. I am going to be holding on to the Bryant, and I'm going to be returning the Hubble, because for the price, there's no need to spend this much extra for the same exact product, at least for what appears to be the same exact product. So I've actually had this removed. I've already pulled this off once. And so what's underneath there, it's already disconnected, but I wanted to put it kind of back together for you so that I could walk you through what you're looking at. I don't know if you can see it very well, but right here, we have a short that hit on this side, it appears. So there was something with heat that hit on this side. Obviously, the ground hit hard. And sparked and did all of its thing. We even looks like we have something here, and some of this could also be wear. As you can see, let me see if I zoom in, if you can get a better look at this. You can see that there is a bit of wear on these. It's starting to get a little bit more loose. Even just the plastic itself is appearing a bit loose there in the middle. But that's what's happening here. These things loosen up over time. They're not made for all these cycles. So I'm gonna take this off now and show you what it looks like on the inside. Taking a look here on the plug itself, here's where you're going to look, actually where the burn marks are. Let's see if I can get you a view of that where you can see Leviton. It's hard to see on camera, but it definitely says that right there. And that is where you're gonna look on this plug if you take the faceplate off to see if this is indeed a Leviton outlet. So we can see a little bit of melting happening. So this must have happened over time. There must have been a lot of heat going through this for that nylon to really melt like that. And I'm surprised about the burn marks, honestly, more than anything. The little flame that happened, but on the back, it doesn't really, I mean, there's just heat. You can see where there's a little bit of, over time, some of this is kind of melting away a little bit. So it's getting too hot and it's getting too many cycles. That's what caused this thing to fail, essentially, is my best take on what happened here. So what's the game plan? Here's the game plan. What I'm gonna do is I'm gonna pull this box out. I've already got the breaker off, obviously. I'm gonna pull these wires out. I actually bought a 3-gang because this thing is really starting to get loose in there. And so I'm gonna go a little bit farther on the outside to get a better hold on this, and I'm gonna cap it. I'm not gonna use it anymore. Just cap it so that way I have access if I ever need it, but it's going to be blocked. And then down here is where I'm going to install another box similar to this, but for the outlet, and it's going to go right next to it. As you can see, there's a little hole here. I've already found the stud, that little hole, so I'll have a nice secure place to mount this instead of using wall anchors. So this will go really nicely right here, and then we'll have our outlet. So that way, any equipment, I can still use that. Plus, long term, if we decide to go ahead and hardwire this, which the only reason we don't is because we test other equipment, is I'll be able to do that without causing any issues with having to reroute all the wiring for the Autel charger, which we have been rocking. It's been great and been doing really good for us. So that's kind of the plan. I'm gonna start taking this all apart and get all this pulled out. I've already got some new wire that we're gonna run from the same breaker, as long as the breaker looks good, and we will get that set up for junction box right down here. All right, so here's where we're at. I have removed this box, and I'll come back later and put my 3-gang in there and the cap on top of that. But what I want to do, I have run our new wires. This is 6 gauge, and this stuff is set, ready to go. And this will allow me to upgrade later by having the right wires now. So I have a little bit of extra, so I'm gonna have to cut this back a little bit. But we are set up in the panel with that 50 amp breaker, which is going to be ready to go. And the one below it, I turned this off. This is the Autel charger, but I did that just so I didn't have any issues with accidentally bumping over. So I did not show you all this on purpose. Get an electrician to do this for you. Do not do this yourself. This part though is the easy stuff because you can turn off the breaker and the wiring is not live. So I'm gonna set this camera up now and we are going to do this together. So basically this is where you should be. If you go out into your garage and you find out you have the wrong plug, the bad plug, you would remove it, disconnect it, and this is what you'd be looking at. So that's basically where we're at this step. I'm gonna show you now how to hook up our new Bryant 1450 outlet now. Let me show you what we're working with here. This needs to be properly torqued, and this is a torque driver. These are not too terribly expensive, and this particular one comes in a kit. I've only used it a couple of times, but it does not have the right bit size. So I'll put a link in the description for what you need. So you'll need one of these, and you'll need the right size bit as well. The torque setting for these is 75 inch-pounds. So again, this is an inch-pound torque driver. So we need to get all the way up towards the top. Make sure that you're getting one that is made for this much. So we're gonna just keep on spinning till we get this thing all the way up. All right, so there's 75. We hit 65, and then 2 full turns all the way around will get us 5 more inch-pounds each. So do that twice, that gets us to 75 inch-pounds. That is the torque setting. So as we turn this, it'll allow us to get to the right tightness on these terminals. Now I'm just realizing in this moment that I actually need to get an extender because this is going to be too shallow for this particular plug. It does go back pretty far. I wasn't really thinking about that, but you can get an extender for this, which is what I'm going to have to do. So I'm gonna have to run to the store and get that. And but in the meantime, let's show you how to wire this thing up. So we want to cut back the excess. Don't want to have too much, but don't cut back too far. You need to have room to work with, but you also need to be able to put these cables into the box with the excess. And the nice thing about this particular one is there's not too much of a turn there. And the bottom ones are all going to be about the same. Basically, this is the right way up. and we have the ground up top, and then everything else is on the bottom. We have our two hots and we have our neutral. So ground, hot, hot, neutral, green, XXX, YYY, white. That's how this is supposed to be oriented, and for those plugs to go in, and then it'll go into place. So let's strip these back. On the back of our outlet as well, there's also this handy dandy setup that shows you how far you need to strip these. We're going to get all the bottoms in. Now, which goes where? Obviously the white is your neutral and the bare one is your ground, so that's pretty self-explanatory. White to white, ground to green. Now what about the red and black, which are your hot leads? So in this particular situation, it does not matter. You can put red here, black here, black here, red, black, doesn't matter. You just have to have the two hots in the hot position, and that is all that matters. So let's start by getting that set up. There we go. That's our indication that this is torqued enough. And this can be a little tricky because these wires are so thick that they become very stiff. There we go. And finally, we have our ground here. So let's get all this flipped around, get our ground led in on the side. All right, and with that, I'm gonna run to the store real quick and get an extension for this box. Just got back from the hardware store. This is what we're going to be using. It's an extension for the outlet itself, and I am pretty sure I can slip this over. But basically what it does is it takes your existing box and gives you additional space. In this case, an extra inch, which is about all we really need. So I'm going to tear this open now and we'll get this set up. What's important about the particular one I chose is that we do have the foam on the back, so it can help make a proper seal on this extension. So I'm going to go ahead and pop out these holes here. And now we will take our included fasteners here and pop them through. Now that we've got this set up, I've got the foam as best I can around these edges. Some of it's sticking out a little bit, and that's okay. That's better than not being through the edge, which it is all the way around. That's going to help keep it watertight in there. And the next thing we need to do is get the actual plug mounted onto the box. And we're going to have a little bit of fun doing that because these cables are pretty tough. And now there's, 3 of them plus a ground. So in cases like this, sometimes it's helpful to have a pair of pliers or whatever, just to help bend these a little bit, to help get them to stay where you want them. Just don't accidentally cut them. Now we can go ahead and put the lid on and apply these guys. There we go. And it looks like you can even clamp this if you were worried about, the kids messing with it or whatever, but should be good doing that. But plugging and unplugging is really what this plug is all about, which it actually feels pretty good. It's definitely tight, which is what you want. So it should last longer, and this still looks like it's doing well. So I think the only thing left to do, turn the power on and see what happens. All right, don't kill me. This is good news. Let me show you what I'm looking at. We are cycling on, so in a few moments all those green lights should go away, and then we'll be able to see the status of this charger. There you go. So here's the moment of truth. It's a good start. I heard it click. Let's go in the car, see what we're getting. 243 volts, that's good. So that 32 amps is normal because that's what I have this one limited to. So yeah, this is looking good. No issues charging. I think we got it all set up right. So as you can see, I still have a little bit of work to do. I've got to cover this hole up, but I'll do that later. The point is our box is working, as you can see from the charger behind me. So this is great news. Again, please take a look at what outlet you have in your wall. Do not let this happen to you. Don't put yourself in this situation or your family in this situation. I'm so glad that things went the way that they did and that our panel had all of its safeties in place and really did what it was supposed to do to prevent something pretty catastrophic from happening. Take some time in your garage. If you have a 1450 outlet, make sure it's an appropriate 1450 outlet. There's a link in the description. Again, the Bryant one is the same thing as the Hubble, at least from what I can tell. And it's about half the price. So either one of those are the ones that you're going to want to look at getting. So with these types of things, don't ever mess around. If you don't feel comfortable doing even just the stuff I did today, hire an electrician. Always best to hire an electrician, hire a professional to do this for you, and then you don't have to think about it. But in my case, my professional selected an outlet that was not good for this type of an application. So I guess you get what you get, but at least check up after your professional. Maybe order the outlet, hire the professional, hand it to them, and tell them to install that one. So if you want to see more about how I have this wall connector set up to work on a 1450, make sure to hit this video right up here. I hope that you enjoyed this video, and I will catch you on the next one.